Hi, welcome to the Herbal Hour. I'm your host, Stephen Horn, and today our topic is there is a cure for the common cold and the flu too. And we're not just talking about there is a Santa Claus. I actually mean that there is a cure for the common cold. I've heard people say, you can take stuff and you'll be over the cold in 4 or 5 days. You can not take stuff and you'll be over the cold in 4 or 5 days. I don't believe that. I've experienced things very differently. And I'm a person who's talking from experience because when I was young, I got sick really easily. I had chronic sinus problems, a lot of respiratory weakness. I got sick at the drop of the hat. I was always catching colds. I was always having sinus headaches and coughs and sneezing and so on and so forth. And it would take me forever to get over it. My parents would haul me off to the doctor. The doctor would give me antibiotics. I'd get well, and before long I would be sick again. So I had a lot of health problems growing up. And when I discovered some really important secrets that I'm going to share with you on this video today, this program today, I learned how to get over colds very rapidly. Sometimes now when I first have a cold coming on, I can knock it out of me in just an hour or two. Very rarely can I not knock out a cold or any kind of acute illness in less than 24 hours. The only time I'm not able to do that is when I don't catch it right at the beginning stages and it goes a little longer. And even then I'm able to get it over it a lot more rapidly than I was when I was young. So there are ways of dealing with the common cold and flu. And the first thing that you need to understand is that the cold is the cure. This is the secret that I learned. To put it more specifically, what I learned is that the way that you help the body recover from acute illness is you work with what the body is trying to do instead of against what the body is trying to do. And the symptoms that you're experiencing when you have a cold or the flu or whatever are actually a result of the body's immune system fighting off the illness. So what happens is most people think that the symptom is the disease, i.e. the runny nose is the disease, the fever is the disease, the various symptoms that are manifesting in the cold are the cold. And if I can get rid of the symptoms, I'm getting rid of the cold. Well, what I learned, and I'm going to explain this in detail on this video, is that the symptoms are the body's way of recovering from the disease. So if you take stuff with the idea in mind of suppressing the symptoms, you are actually interfering with the body recovering from the cold. However, if you take things that work with the body in what it's trying to do, you can greatly accelerate the healing process and radically diminish the time that it takes to get over the cold or the flu or any other kind of acute illness. The secret, again, is to learn to work with the body, not against the body. To work with the symptoms, not against the symptoms. And once I learned that secret, I found it very easy to deal with these kind of acute ailments. To put this in another way, it's more important that you know what you're trying to do than it is to know how you're going to do it. In other words, if you're going to make a goal, you better be shooting at the right target. If you're shooting at the wrong target, even if you're using good ammunition and you've got good aim, you're not going to get the results that you're working for. And so what most people are doing is, because their goal in their head is to get rid of the symptoms, not to get rid of the disease, they are shooting at the wrong target. Now, unfortunately, when people get into natural remedies, like me, this happened to me, when I first got into natural remedies, I was shooting at the wrong target. I expected herbal remedies to do the same thing that drug remedies do, i.e. get rid of my symptoms. And therefore, I got kind of haphazard results because I didn't know the target I was aiming for. I didn't know what I was trying to achieve, and therefore I was not achieving it. Once I understood the principles that I'm going to show you today in this program, I was able to invent cures as I went along, because there are lots of ways to skin the cat. There's lots of ways to get things done if you know where you're headed or where you're going. So with that, I'm going to explain to you the principles that I learned that helped me discover how to get over colds and flu and so forth very quickly, in contrast to the long time it took me to get over when I was young. And I'm also going to give you some very specific pointers on how you do these specific procedures, how you reach this goal that I'm talking about. What really helped me was I ran into a model, or actually I created a model based on the writings of Samuel Thompson. And Samuel Thompson compared the body to a stove. And like a stove, we take in fuel in the form of food, we breathe in air, and then our body metabolizes or burns, combusts that fuel to create heat. And that life energy, or heat, runs all the processes of the body. And then we also eliminate the waste, because that process of burning that food inside of us creates waste materials that are then removed through the eliminative channels. Now, what happens when you become acutely sick is essentially you've been throwing poor quality food into the firebox. The amount of air is diminished into the firebox, so you don't get a clean, hot, burning flame. So this next graphic shows what happens is the system starts to plug up with waste material, and the chimney there you can see is clogged with soot. And this is the condition that sets up in the body for developing acute illnesses like colds and flu. And so essentially what's happening is the body is congested, food is not being metabolized efficiently, waste material is backing up in the system, and we now have created a breeding ground for microorganisms that will come into the body and feed off of that environment. Now, this is called the biological terrain theory of disease. And what it's saying is you don't get sick because you were exposed to germs. You get sick because your biological terrain, or the internal environment in your body, was set up to be a breeding ground for those germs. And because you have a breeding ground for those germs, they got a foothold in your system because of the underlying condition of what's going on in your body. Now, the analogy here that it'll help you understand this, is mosquitoes do not create swamps, and flies do not create garbage piles. So you can spray your swamp with pesticides, or you can spray your garbage pile with pesticides, and it'll temporarily drive away the mosquitoes or temporarily drive away the flies. But ultimately, as soon as that pesticide wears off, the flies or the mosquitoes will return, because there is a breeding ground there for those creatures. The same thing is true in your body. If you have garbage piles in your body and swamps in your body, then different kinds of microbes, viruses and bacteria and so forth, are attracted to and breed in that internal environment in your body. So you can take antibiotics, you can take various medications, you can do things to suppress the symptoms. It will temporarily relieve the situation, but you'll catch the next one that comes along, and the next one that comes along. And I know that this is true because when I've been taking good care of myself and eating correctly and knowing how to keep my body so there's a correct internal environment, I've had situations where every member of my family got sick. I was still going to work. I was nursing everybody back to health, and I myself did not get sick, because I didn't have the internal environment for those microorganisms to breed inside my system. So what we have to do is quit focusing on the microbes and start focusing on changing the internal environment, or the biological terrain of the body. Once you do that, there is no more breeding ground for the microbes. Therefore, there will be no more illness. And the faster you can change the internal environment, the faster you will recover. Now, This next graphic would show that there are 4 basic ways that the body eliminates excess waste from the system. I call these the 4 chimneys: the skin, the urinary passages, the respiratory system, and the colon. These are the 4 primary ways that the body eliminates waste. What happens is when the system plugs up, let's say that one of those chimneys, the colon, starts to become congested, and that's the one that usually gets congested first. Then the excess waste in the body starts shunting over to one of the other channels of elimination. Maybe the kidneys will try to take up the slack, maybe the skin will try to take up the slack, maybe the lungs or respiratory passages will try to take up the slack. When that happens, the body will go through a process of what I call vicarious elimination or emergency evacuation, where it starts using that other channel of elimination to dump excess irritants from the system. That makes that other channel of elimination susceptible to infection, number 1. But number 2, it will create symptoms of discharge of irritants from that system. What happens then is we decide that we're going to fix this problem. So because our sinuses are running, we take something to stop our sinuses from running. Well, that's like taking and putting a cork in that other chimney. It only keeps the waste material that the body is trying to eliminate in the system and prolongs the length of time it takes you to get over the illness. When I first encountered this idea, it made a lot of sense to me, but I didn't have a lot of practical experience with it. Over the years, as I've done this again and again with myself, with members of my family, with clients, friends, etc., I can tell you that I have the experience to know that this model of looking at health and disease is absolutely accurate. It absolutely works. It is extremely dependable. And once you understand this, so you understand what it is you're trying to do to help your body recover, and you start doing it, you can get some really, really amazing results with getting over colds, flu, and other things in remarkably short periods of time. Now, I'm going to show you another model here of what is happening with acute disease. That line across the bottom represents the normal vitality or normal energy level of the body. When the body encounters an irritation of some kind, it starts mounting an increase in energy, that's represented by the arc line, in order to try to create enough energy to push out what is irritating the system so it can be thrown out of the body. And that throwing out of the body is something we call the disease crisis. Once the disease crisis passes, the body's energy gradually returns to normal. Now, I can illustrate this best by using a very, very practical example. Let's say you went to a restaurant. They didn't practice proper sanitation procedures, and an hour or 2 after you got home, you start to get this queasy feeling in the pit of your stomach. And that queasy feeling grows stronger and stronger, and you start feeling worse and worse and worse until you find yourself in the bathroom, kneeling before the throne, praying for relief. And then relief happens. You throw up. And then what happens? You feel better. Okay? What happened is that increasing sense you had of dis-ease, of lack of ease, was due to the body in mounting this energetic response to try to push out of the system what was irritating it. Once it was able to push out of the system what was irritating it, then your symptoms start to subside, or your sense of dis-ease starts to subside, and you gradually return to normal. You're a little tired afterwards because your body just expended a great deal of energy in expelling this irritation, but you're over it. Now, let's suppose, for example, that we could take a drug. So you've got this food poisoning. Now, we can take a drug that suppresses nausea and vomiting. Is that going to help you recover? No, absolutely not. Because what that's going to do is it's going to interfere with what your body is trying to do to get rid of the cause of the disease. What will happen, instead of you throwing up, it'll pass down through your intestines, get absorbed into your system, probably cause you diarrhea, make you sick and achy and so forth all over for days. Well, When I first started to understand this, I thought, what's the difference between that and a runny nose? In other words, if I take and I fight against the runny nose and try to make it stop draining, then what's going to happen is I'm interfering with the body throwing off what is irritating it, and therefore it's going to take me longer to recover, because that's what I'd done my whole life. When I switched my goal to helping my body get rid of the waste that was irritating it, I found that it was very easy sometimes, like I said, to get over a cold in as little as 2 hours. So the model that I came up with healing colds is based on that little furnace model, is the ABC system, but in this case it's ACB, which means activate, cleanse, and then rebuild. Because remember I said that once your body's discharged the irritant, you're going to be tired and you need to rebuild your energy. Activate simply means to get the energy going in the body. Cleanse means to open up the channels of elimination and help the body get rid of the things that are irritating it. And build means restoking the fire with good nutrition. So this is the basic procedure for dealing with colds, flu, sore throats, earaches, any kind of acute illness or infectious illness. So we're going to cover each one of these 3 basic steps in detail. The first one, activating a healing response, is about fanning the spark of life, because if you can keep the body's energy up, the body will always heal itself. Now, there's 2 aspects of this activating thing. One of them is emotional and psychological. The other one is physical. The emotional psychological thing is a lot of times when we're sick, we feel bad. We really need loving support from other people. So I find that giving tender, loving care to a sick person is the best form of health care we can have. There's a lot of research out there showing that, positive emotions, positive feelings, interaction with other people has this remarkable effect of enhancing our immune system and increasing our ability to recover from anything. So I think that it's been shown that touch, for example, greatly accelerates the healing process. And as this Dr. Paul Pearsall is a psychologist who wrote the book, The Pleasure Prescription, he says one of the places where you're in the hospital, you almost never get touched in any kind of loving way. You get jabbed, poked, pinched, prodded, etc. And yet being touched in a loving way is one of the most activating things to our immune system and to healing response that you can do. So just like with a sick child or a sick loved one, just touching them tenderly, being there for them, is one of the things that enhances the body's ability to recover greatly. And while we're on that topic, everybody's down on placebo effect, but placebo effect is good. I mean, anything that you can do to help a person feel like they can recover quicker, by all means do it. Give them as many lucky rabbit's feet as you possibly can to reassure them, especially with children, that they're going to recover, because having a positive attitude about recovery also greatly enhances recovery. And to take that one step further, prayer is really, really powerful. There is actual scientific research that proves that praying enhances people's recovery from illness. So don't be afraid to pray when people in your family are sick, to pray to help them recover. It's just it's a simple thing. Also, you can pray for guidance, because a lot of times when someone's been sick, I've prayed for help, and I've gotten inspiration that's helped me to figure out what to do in that particular case. Now that's the first part of activation. It has to do with the mental and emotional and spiritual aspect of healing, which a lot of times that alone is enough to help a person recover faster. But you can also take things that increase the energy in the body, that kind of activate the body's innate energy to help clear the condition out. And I call these herbal activators that fan the spark of life. And my little hot cayenne pepper, hot pepper there, is one of my favorites. Capsicum. You can also use things like the CCA formula, CCA with yerba santa, HCPX, which is Samuel Thompson's herbal composition powder. These are all examples of activating remedies. They aren't by any means the only ones you can use. In fact, just about any aromatic herb, ginger, horseradish, whatever, will act as an activator. What these remedies do, in Chinese medicine, they have the concept of what's called the metal element, the body's swords and shields. And basically, associated with the metal element is an energy they call the Wei Qi. And it's an energy that pushes outward on the skin and mucous membranes, which are the external and internal lining of the body, to keep bad things out of the body. Well, if you look at what aromatic herbs do, like capsicum, ginger, horseradish, mustard, etc., is they push outward against those membranes and skin. What happens when you eat that hot, spicy food? You may get the little beads of perspiration welling up as things move out through your skin. You may get a little bit of sinus drainage as it pushes stuff out through your sinuses. It also enhances digestive secretions and pushes things out through the colon. So these aromatic herbs enhance the ability of the body to push irritants out through the surface of the mucous membranes and out through the surface of the skin. So a lot of times, if you do nothing more than give something to activate this energy that pushes outward, it will accelerate the ability of the body to eliminate what's going on. One of the remedies that I have whenever I feel that I'm coming down with a cold or flu is I go and I make some tomato soup. I get some natural tomato soup now from the health food store, and I warm it up, and then I dump as much cayenne pepper in it as I can possibly tolerate and eat it as hot as I can, drinking lots of water until I get myself kind of perspiring and so forth. And sometimes that's enough to knock the thing out, because again, you're creating this energy that pushes outward and helps the body have the energy to get rid of the disease. The second step of this, though, is to actually more deliberately enhance the cleansing of the body. And to do that, you've got to become a chimney sweep for the body. You've got to go back to those 4 chimneys we talked about earlier: the skin, the colon, the kidneys, and the respiratory passages. And you want to learn how to sweep the debris out of those 4 chimneys in the body. Because if you can open up any of the chimneys that are plugged so that the body can get rid of the waste material that's built up in the system faster, it's like draining the swamp or taking out the garbage. You have removed the breeding ground for the flies and mosquitoes, i.e. the viruses and the bacteria and other microbes. And once the breeding ground is gone, there's no foothold for them to remain there anymore. Now, again, this is probably a radical departure from what most of you have thought about, treating disease. But believe me, it works, and it's far more effective and works a heck of a lot more quickly than trying to focus on destroying the microbes, okay? So let's again look at those 4 chimneys that we're going to talk about. Those 4 chimneys are the bowel, the kidneys, the skin, and the lungs. And when you're acutely ill, the more of those chimneys that you can sweep clean and get the debris moving out of, the faster you will recover. So we'll start with chimney number 1, which is clearing the gastrointestinal system. Getting that entire GI tract from the mouth to the other end clear of debris. And when it comes to cleansing, this is a nice one. Number 2 is number 1. That's a potty humor joke for those of you who have little children. Cleansing the gastrointestinal tract is your first priority, because most of the time that's the chimney that's the worst plugged up. So it's the one that you want to focus on usually first. Now, the fastest way to clear the gastrointestinal tract when you're acutely ill is to take an enema. Did I say enema? Oh dear. A lot of people are terrified of this idea, but really it's not that bad of a procedure, and you'd be amazed at how quickly you can get over tons of things if you just clear out your colon with an enema. I have used enemas with my kids to treat fevers, congestion in the lungs, earaches, sore throats. I've used them with myself for similar purposes, and I've seen recoveries in as little as 2 hours. Usually though, when I do an enema, I don't just put in water. I actually use some different things to enhance healing with an enema solution. You can make an infusion or decoction of a wide variety of herbs, but that is time consuming. So some of the things I prefer to do is to put like 3 to 5 drops per pint of some essential oils into the water, or a teaspoon of tincture or extract to a pint of water, or in some cases you can add probiotics, that's friendly bacteria, to repopulate the colon. My favorite things actually for using as enema solutions are like essential oils. A few drops of lavender oil or tea tree oil adds a disinfectant thing to the enema solution. I know some people have used coffee enemas. I would prefer to actually use something like burdock or dandelion that's detoxifying to the liver without all the caffeine and so forth. I've also used Samuel Thompson's herbal composition tea, or a formula that I'll mention later that's using the composition tea, adding a little bit of lobelia and golden seal. It's a formula called Herbal Crisis. And I also use yarrow, elderflower, and peppermint. I've also used garlic. Have a Dr. Mom, Dr. Dad class that goes into detail about a lot of this stuff. But basically, I've experimented with a lot of different things, and I think it's better if you actually put, like I say, something in the enema solution. Okay, this is like embarrassing stuff to talk about. It's a nasty job, but somebody's got to do it. So I guess the thing falls to me. When you do an enema with yourself, you want to start off laying on your left side. You let some of the fluid trickle in there until you feel any discomfort, pressure, or pain. At that point, you stop the flow. Wait a minute, take a few deep breaths. Maybe you can rub your abdomen a little bit. If the pressure or pain or whatever doesn't go away, then get up and expel and start over. You don't ever want to take an enema where you're forcing fluid into the colon where it becomes uncomfortable. And what will happen is that gradually you'll be able to clear the entire length of the colon. You start on your left side, move to your back, and then after you've cleared far enough, you move over to your right side so you can get the ascending colon. The colon comes up the right, across, and down the left, and that's why you do it the way I've talked about. When you give an enema to a child, you use a bulb syringe. You make sure you remove the air pocket, and again, you insert a little fluid in rectally. If you encounter pressure or whatever, you stop, you wait, and try it again. So you do this slowly, patiently, and so forth. And the goal is to get the colon to clear. It isn't about, okay, again, remember, knowing what you're trying to accomplish is more important than knowing how you're going to do it. So once I had a kid who was sick, and I left work, and I suggested my wife give the kid an enema. Came back home, the kid was still sick. She says, well, I gave him an enema like you said. And I said, what came out? She said, nothing. So I went back and I gave the kid an enema, worked with him until the colon cleared. The kid was well an hour later. By the way, I've seen that happen over and over again with fevers, with colds, with whatever, that as soon as the colon was clear, within an hour or two, the child was completely well. Now, enemas can be useful for any of the following: fevers, respiratory congestion, chronic sinus problems, nausea and stomach aches, earaches and sore throats, and even headaches. Now, if you can't take an enema, and if that's just like too scary for you, well, there are some other ways to clear the colon. They're a little slower, but they still work. One is to make tea, herbal composition tea, and sip the tea slowly. Don't eat anything, just drink water and sip the tea. A lot of times just taking little bits of lobelia every 10 or 15 minutes, again with water, that will also do it. And the combination of the two, the composition tea plus the lobelia, will be very helpful. You could, of course, take a little bit of LB extract. That's a lower bowel herbal laxative formula. The problem with herbal laxatives is this. It takes about 8 hours for them to work. Because that's about how long it takes for the body to take the cascara or anthraquinones into the system. So it's a much slower way of doing this. I find that taking the composition and lobelia is actually faster than that. Also, just drinking lots of water. And with little children, sometimes just giving them fresh apple juice or a little bit of prune juice or something like that. That's a very gentle way to go about this. That will help to clear the system. But anyway, I've done it that way too, where I couldn't use an enema, and I've had some remarkable results with that. The next thing we're going to talk about is flushing the body's filters, i.e. the kidneys. And this is basically done by, you've heard it before, go to bed, rest, drink plenty of fluids. Water. Water is the number one detoxifying thing that you can do. It's important for every eliminative channel, and just by itself, drinking lots of water will enhance your recovery. Because again, what are we trying to do? We're trying to flush irritants out of the system. Water will help your lungs expel irritation. It'll help your colon work better, it'll help your kidneys work better. Help your lymphatics work better, even help drain toxins out through your skin. Now there are some specific things that you can take that will help flush the lymphatics and the kidneys, and these include kidney drainage, lymphatic drainage, lymph gland cleanse, and lymph gland cleanse HY. Now, the way you use the kidney drainage and lymphatic drainage, and this is a really good thing to do if you have an acute illness where you're getting swollen lymph nodes and kind of are congested throughout the body, because that's a sign that you've got very sluggish lymph movement. And if there's a little bit of fluid retention or a little bit of a urinary tract infection, then you want to flush the kidneys and lymphatics. So you put about a half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of kidney drainage, and then a half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of lymphatic drainage in a quart of water, and you sip that constantly until you start to feel better. I mean, in other words, take a swig every few minutes and just keep drinking it throughout the day. When you have a cold or the flu, it is really best not to eat anything. It's really best to go into a semi-fast and just take the herbs and just drink lots of liquids, because if you go back to that furnace analogy, it's like your fire is smoldering. So when you put the food in, it doesn't digest very well anyway. The body's having a hard time breaking it down. So if you just drink the fluids, it helps clear the system, and then when the system clears, your appetite will come back and you'll be able to eat, and it'll feel better again. The next chimney we need to open up is opening up the pores. It's getting the skin to open up, which is the largest channel of elimination in the body. And you can do this one of two ways. You can either sweat it out or you can draw it out. In other words, you can get the body to perspire, or you can use the skin and pull toxins out of the body through the skin. This is done with sweat baths and drawing baths. So the first thing we'll talk about is the sweat bath. And the easiest way to take a sweat bath is to use about 10 to 20 drops of some essential oils such as lavender, peppermint, whatever you like, it doesn't really matter. Mix it with a little natural soap like Sunshine Concentrate or Dr. Bronner's Super Mild Baby Soap. Put it in the bath water and fill up the tub with water as hot as you can stand it. You want to drink plenty of fluids, water, or better yet, some of that herbal composition tea, and or take the water and take some cayenne or ginger internally, and then you soak in the tub with the water as hot as you can comfortably tolerate it for about 15 to 20 minutes. After which you get out of bed, dry off, and immediately go to the bed, pile on the blankets, and continue to drink fluids. This gets you to start sweating, so you can literally sweat the cold out. If you combine this with stuff to clear the gastrointestinal tract, this typically knocks out a cold in nothing flat. Because again, what are you doing? You're helping the body clear the things that are irritating it. Now, when you're dealing with things like chickenpox, measles, rashes, or even if you want a more effective way of clearing out through the skin, you can take this treatment one step further and do the cold sheet treatment. And what you do is, after you get out of that bath, you apply herbal trim or aloe vera gel mixed with a little bit of Thai-fu oil to the body, and you rub it all over your skin. Then you wrap up in a damp sheet. And it's called the cold sheet treatment. I mean, you can use a sheet that's been wrung out in warm water, but the fact of the matter is once you pull it out and hang it up and start wrapping it, it's going to be cool. And then you go to bed and cover yourself with blankets. What you do is, before you do this, you lay a sheet of plastic over the bed so that when you wrap yourself in the damp sheet, you go lay on top of the plastic, you have someone flip the plastic over on top of you, then you cover yourself with the blankets, and you sweat it out. Aloe vera is a drying agent. It helps pull toxins out of the skin. Okay, the little bit of the Thai-fu oil, which is in herbal trim, and there's other things in herbal trim that are drying as well as the aloe vera. That's why I recommend herbal trim. If you can't have it, then the aloe vera gel and the Thai-fu will do okay. But that'll pull the toxins out of your skin, and the wet sheet acts like another layer of skin, so it helps to wick the toxins out of your body, and it literally pulls that stuff out of your system, and as well as the fact that it's opening up so you're perspiring, and that really detoxifies you really quickly. Now, like I mentioned, this is really useful where you have anything that causes itching, chickenpox, measles, rashes, etc., to pull the toxins out of the body. You can accelerate that same effect if you also take blood purifiers internally, such as blue vervain, Echinacea, VSC, Oregon grape, or the lymphatic drainage formula. All of these formulas work internally to promote lymphatic drainage, to help the liver, and to help basically metabolize the toxins inside when you get those kind of things that involve the skin. Now, you can also do what's called a drying bath. In a drying bath, you use mucilaginous herbs like comfrey is a good one, or seaweeds like some kelp or Irish moss or bladderwrack, or you can throw in some Epsom salts. You can use Epsom salts with essential oils too. Or I like to use clay. I use a clay called Redmond clay. You again drink plenty of fluids. You soak in the bath with the drying agents for 15 to 20 minutes. Then you get up afterwards, take a shower and rinse off, and then go again to bed. Now, I really like the clay. It's one of my favorite drying agents. I buy Redmond clay which is from a company called American Orsa that sells real salt. It's located here in Utah. And I put about a cup of clay in a bath of water. And I've seen this do wonderful things, again, where there is itching. I've also used for itching some of the blood purifiers in the bath. Like when one of my children had chicken pox and was itching, some that were in a very private location and they were getting red and whatever, I stuck her in a bath and slathered Oregon grape all over her arms and legs and back and chest, and let her put the rest in the bath water and let her play in it, and that completely relieved the itching. I also gave her some internally. Since that time, I've also learned that clay will do the same thing. Most of the time when you have these kind of itchy, poxy kind of conditions, you're dealing with a fat-soluble toxin, and clay pulls the fats out of the skin, whereas the Sweat bath relieves more of the water-soluble toxins that you tend to find in things like colds and flu. So if you got colds and flu, I usually would use the sweat bath or the cold sheet treatment. If you've got more of a chicken pox, measles, that sort of thing, I use the drying bath. Now, you can also help the body get rid of stuff through the lungs and respiratory tract. So the next channel of elimination is to plug the leaks, get rid of the excess drainage in the respiratory system. And this is actually done not by really plugging the leaks. I use that just as kind of a fun analogy. What you really want to do is you really want to help the body cough, sneeze, otherwise get rid of what's irritating the lungs. And you do that with herbs that are called expectorants and decongestants. Expectorants help you expel the mucus. Decongestants help break it up so it isn't too thick and it's easy to expel. Examples of this include ALJ, blue vervain, CCA with yerba santa, lobelia, garlic, and Thai fu oil. You can also use lymphatic drainage massage to massage areas where the lymph nodes are congested or painful, or you can rub this stuff on the chest and the back when you have respiratory congestion. And you can use things like lobelia and capsicum combined, Thai fu oil, or other essential oils diluted in a carrier oil like almond oil or some other massage oil, and massage that in to the body. I've had children that you could hear rattling in their lungs. They were very congested in their lungs. I've taken garlic oil or oils like eucalyptus, thyme, and rosemary diluted in a little carrier oil, rubbed it into their back and chest, rubbing all the lymph nodes in between their ribs, put them to bed and have them wake up the next morning with their lungs completely clear. So this is very simple stuff. It's easy to do, and it's very, very effective. So basically, we've activated the system, we've done our chimney sweep. Now what we want to do is at a certain point, the body will successfully discharge what's irritating it, and the symptoms immediately start to subside and the person starts to feel better. However, if you don't want to have a relapse, you want to practice this next step, which is about building the body, in other words, nutritional considerations for acute illness. The reason why this is really, really important is because it relates to a saying that actually originates with Hippocrates that everybody misunderstands. It's feed a cold, starve a fever. Well, what Hippocrates meant when he said feed a cold, starve a fever is this. He meant if you feed a cold, you will have to starve a fever. Get that? If you feed a cold, you will have to starve a fever. In other words, when you are dealing with colds, flu, sore throats, earaches, fevers, any of those kind of illnesses, you do not put heavy food into the body. One of the biggest keys to recovering from this is actually to go into a semi-fast and not eat anything solid. So you you either fast or you eat light foods, mostly liquids, until the crisis is past. And remember, the crisis is the point at which the body is able to successfully discharge whatever was irritating it. So that means you've perspired, your colon's cleared, you've eliminated the irritants. Now, once the irritants are eliminated, you don't immediately jump back in and start eating McDonald's cheeseburgers. We shouldn't be eating that in the first place. But you've got to go ahead and start gradually rebuilding the body. Because if you think of it like a fire, okay, if you've got a fire and it's kind of started to die and smolter, you don't revive it by throwing logs on it. You kind of pull away the debris, you find some glowing coals, you fan them, that's activate, okay? And the cleanse is you pull away things that are interfering with the flow of oxygen. And then you rebuild it by adding little twigs first till you get a little bigger flame, then adding a little bigger twigs till you get a bigger flame, and then you gradually build the fire back up to where you can add logs. So the secret to the recovery here is to go from kindling to logs with nutrition. You start off when you're sick with water, herbal teas, or maybe some juices or soup broths. And that's all you eat when you're sick. But as soon as you've passed the crisis, you can maybe have a little fresh fruit or some vegetables. Okay, and then maybe at the next meal you can introduce a little bit of grain or nuts or seeds or legumes, and you want to wait about 24 hours before reintroducing any heavy proteins such as meat and dairy products. And of course, treats, refined and processed foods, are, things that you shouldn't be eating at all when you're sick or recovering from sickness, because they're really not healthy for you. Now, if you're really healthy, you can, I call those like green logs, okay? If you're really, really healthy, you can actually burn up some junk food once in a while. It isn't going to hurt you because your metabolic flame and your overall biological terrain is strong enough to handle it. But it's just like if you've got a really fast-burning bonfire, you can throw a piece of green wood on it and it'll burn it up. But if you've got a fire that's smoldering, dying, having problems, and you throw green wood on it, you're really in trouble. So you don't want to throw the really poor stuff onto the fire whenever you're sick. Now that's the basic overview. So let's apply this to some specific remedies for some specific symptoms. So basically I've given you an overview of the overall procedure for dealing with colds, flu, any kind of acute illness. Now I'm going to get into some specifics. If the problem is some kind of a viral infection, and I'm not just talking about colds and flu, but I'm also talking about more complex viral conditions like mono and so forth, there are some specific remedies that help the body fight viruses. For the colds and flu, elderberry is really good, one of my favorite remedies, in fact, for that kind of thing. So the elderberry plus, or the elderberry defense, actually helps your body resist viruses. For more chronic viral conditions like herpes, so forth, VSC and Unidogato are better choices. But you can, now understand, when I say those are antiviral remedies, you still need to go and alter the terrain. One of the reasons why elderberry works is because it actually helps make the cells resistant to viruses entering the cell. So it actually is altering the biological terrain, but don't forget that you still have to go and do the more more gross process of overhauling biological terrain by getting rid of the things that are irritating the body. Now, if it's a bacterial kind of infection, then I definitely would use the sweat bath and the enema to remove toxins, because the reason why bacteria give you a problem is not the bacteria themselves. It's the toxins that the bacteria produce through their metabolic process that you have to eliminate. And there are herbs that help the body fight off bacterial infections. Garlic is my favorite, especially raw garlic, but also ultimate echinacea, Oregon grape, VSC again is good here, or colloidal silver. So if you know you're dealing with a bacterial infection like strep throat or something, in addition to doing the basic procedures, you can give some of those herbs that more directly deal with the bacteria. Now, fever, I've alluded to. But in fever, again, you want to open up the bowel, ideal with an enema or something else, and then you use sudorific herbs to promote perspiration. Capsicum or ginger are good. Yarrow is one of my favorites for promoting perspiration and breaking fevers. Garlic works. The composition tea, HCPX does, and then put the person in a warm. Well, with a child, you put them in a warm bath. With an adult, you can put them in a hot bath, and then you the goal is to get the fever to break by sweating the person, so that you, because that's what the body's trying to do with the fever, is break the person into a sweat. So if you accelerate the process of breaking the person into a sweat, you accelerate what the body is trying to do to eliminate the disease. Sore throats. That's another one we have. You want to do lymphatic drainage massage on the throat with some of the things I mentioned earlier, like the Taifu oil or whatever, to kind of clear the congested lymph nodes. You want to use the herbs for the swollen lymph glands, which are things like the lymph gland cleanse or lymphatic drainage. And you can also gargle with things like golden seal echinacea, colloidal silver, or the herbal composition tea. I should warn you that the herbal composition tea, because of the cayenne it contains, will sting for about 30 to 60 seconds, but then it'll numb the pain, and it's amazing how fast it takes the pain away. But those are some specific things. I've relieved sore throats in as little as 20 to 30 minutes just by doing massage on the throat to reduce the swelling in the lymph glands. Laryngitis, this is closely related. You can use the same kind of lymphatic drainage massage, but instead of using some of the things I mentioned earlier, try some Celutone, or you can use Typhu oil or Capsicum and Lobelia. Another good remedy for laryngitis is to sip sage tea. That's the herb you used in Thanksgiving stuffing. Just make some of that and sip it, or suck on some zinc lozenges. So that's how you take care of laryngitis and sore throats. Let's move on to some stuff that we get into deeper respiratory conditions involving the chest and coughs and so forth. When you get congestion in the chest, garlic is one of the very best remedies for that, both taken internally or used in an enema. I guess that's using it internally in a bizarre sort of way. But anyway, and you can also do that lymphatic drainage massage on the back of the chest with garlic oil. Just plain olive oil will work, or Typhu lotion, or, as I mentioned, other essential oils like rosemary, eucalyptus, thyme in a carrier oil, massaging the back of the chest and so forth. Bronchitis, you do the same kind of thing as you do for chest congestion, but some good remedies to take internally for that are the bronchial formula, cordyceps, and or ALJ. Those are all good remedies for bronchitis. Now, there are a couple of kinds of coughs where you can get some specific remedies. The basic stuff for congestion works on ordinary coughs where you've got a lot of mucus, where you've got a lot of phlegm coming up, and the cough is what we call productive, meaning when you cough up phlegm. But when you have a dry cough, what's happening is you need to use remedies to hydrate the lungs. So you drink plenty of fluids, and you take things like licorice root. You can even suck on the licorice root powder. Take mullein and marshmallow combined, or cordyceps is really good for dry coughs because you need to hydrate the lungs. A spastic cough is where you've coughed so much that you're getting this okay, because your lungs are getting exhausted. So what you need is something to relax the lungs. So you rub the chest and the back with relaxing oils like lavender or chamomile or something like that. And some specific remedies to take internally for a spastic cough are lobelia or blue vervain. So those are some great things for that. Diarrhea is another thing we should talk about. You want to replace electrolytes when you have diarrhea with drinking water with mineral chi tonic in it, or taking combination potassium while drinking water. And some specific remedies that may be helpful for the diarrhea itself are things that absorb the irritants that the body is trying to discharge, which include remedies like slippery elm, activated charcoal, which is one of my absolute favorites. And in some cases, an astringent like white oak bark will help to kind of tone things up and stop the excess discharge. For nausea and vomiting, you want to actually help the body. That's a sign the liver is trying to detoxify. Taking charcoal or fiber to absorb the toxins can be helpful in many cases. And ginger or peppermint are good remedies for settling the stomach. In some cases, taking lobelia to make you throw up faster will actually help you when you're feeling nauseous, particularly if you've got a little touch of stomach flu or food poisoning. For earaches, you use lymphatic drainage massage on the side of the neck and around the ear. You take the herbs again internally for the swollen lymph glands, and you can use a variety of things as ear drops. Make sure that you put them in the ear warm. Garlic oil, colloidal silver, lobelia, or the juice of a cooked onion. Finally, we've alluded to this again, but for rashes, chicken pox, measles, any kind of itching, open the bowel with an enema. Use a drying bath with alterative herbs or blood purifiers to relieve the itching. You also can use the alteratives or blood purifiers internally, and the cold sheet treatment is really, really helpful. In other words, follow up the drying bath with the wrapping yourself up, rubbing the herbal trim on the skin, wrapping yourself up with a sheet and going to bed and drying things out. So let's summarize. Let's put this all together into one quick little thing of how you do this. Remember that our basic steps are activate, cleanse, and build. And it doesn't matter. Please get this clear. It does not matter. I've given you some specific suggestions for specific kind of illnesses, but really the basic steps work on all of them. All I'm doing is giving you some additional things that you can do for more specialized conditions that will accelerate the process. So A, activate. Be positive, loving, confident, pray, be tender. And then the second half of that is administer activating remedies. And usually I give those activating remedies like every 15 to 60 minutes with lots of water. C, cleanse. Clear the bowel with an enema or whatever other means you want to use to make sure the bowel is clear. Take a sweat bath or a drying bath. Make sure you're drinking plenty of water to flush the toxins. If there's respiratory congestion, use expectorants and decongestants to help break that up. And if there's pain or swelling anywhere, such as a sore throat, earache, etc., then do some massage over the area where it's painful with some things to help drain the lymphatics. Then as far as the nutritional part, fast or use only mild foods, juices, soup broths, etc. until the system clears itself out, and then eat light foods right after the recovery and gradually move to heavier foods. I have used these procedures on all kinds of illnesses. I've seen, like I said, many cases, illnesses being over in just a couple hours, almost always in less than 24. And for me, where I used to get sick and it used to go on for days and days and sometimes a couple of weeks, this has been miraculous information. So I hope that you will try some of these things the next time you are faced with cold or flu or other illness in your family. Yeah, you can always consult with someone with a little more experience to give you some specific suggestions. But honestly, none of this stuff is that difficult. And once you start learning how to do this, I guarantee that you're going to be able to get better and better at it with just practice and experience. So best wishes to you, stay healthy, and thank you for watching. Hi, have a little bit of bonus information for you on this particular program. We're going to talk about some materia medica for colds and flu. In the first half of the program, we talked about the procedures, in other words, what it is you're trying to accomplish when you're dealing with colds and flu. What I want to do here is acquaint you with specific cold and flu remedies and try to differentiate what they're doing so you can know when to apply them properly, when a particular herb is going to be useful for a person or when that herb is not going to be useful. So we're going to start off with just acquainting you with some of the single herbs that are single remedies that are used for treating the colds and flu. And the first of our remedies is going to be capsicum. Capsicum or cayenne pepper is a great remedy for when you have thin, watery mucus for the early stages of the cold. It's very warming and stimulating, and it accelerates the discharge. So it's my favorite remedy when you've got that thin, watery drainage right at the beginning of the cold, or when you have phlegm that's white and thick. That's when capsicum works best for the colds. Ginger is another remedy that's good for colds. It has a warming and stimulating effect like capsicum, but ginger is better for flu, nausea, vomiting, and digestive upset, whereas capsicum is better for respiratory elements. Ginger is better for digestive ailments. So if the digestive system is upset, ginger is a good choice. Another remedy is Echinacea. Echinacea is often used for colds. It's really not the best remedy for the acute stages of a cold. It's a good remedy for preventing getting sick when colds and flu are going around. But where it's best is when there is lymphatic congestion and any kind of chronic infection. Echinacea is particularly useful for more deep-seated, tougher bacterial infections where you really need to boost the immune system to get rid of it. Garlic is my favorite natural antibiotic. Of course, it's antiviral, antibacterial, and antifungal, but it's a really good remedy for congestion in the lungs and a really good remedy for earaches. However you put garlic into the body, whether you rub it on topically in the form of garlic oil, or you give it an enema, or you take it internally, the essential oils of garlic exit through the lungs, hence the garlic breath. But in the process, they clear congestion and fight infection. And so anything involving any kind of problem with infection or congestion in the lungs, pneumonia, bronchitis, deep-seated cough, etc., garlic is one of my favorite remedies. Another remedy that is used a lot for colds is golden seal. But golden seal is best when the mucus is thick and yellowish or a little green or even brown, where you're getting what's called a subacute inflammation on the mucous membranes, and the cold is gone somewhat chronic. It's no longer in the acute stages or the early stages. It's now kind of gotten in a little deeper, and that's where golden seal or golden seal echinacea work very good. Golden seal is also good for urinary tract infections. It's a very good remedy for mucous membranes. Yarrow is one of my favorite remedies for treating colds and fever. Yarrow is antiviral, but it's an excellent remedy for fever and any kind of deep-seated infection because it really goes and stimulates the sweat glands to open up and clears what you might call heat from the blood. Lobelia is another remedy I use a lot with colds and flu. It's an excellent remedy for spastic coughs because it's a strong relaxant. It works. That's why it works on asthma and so forth. But I also use it topically for pain and for congestion. And it actually does help to open the bowel a little bit when you give it internally. Here are a few other quick remedies that you use. Bone set is a really good one for the flu where there's muscle aches and pains. Astragalus is a good nourishing immune tonic that is antiviral and can be used for colds, but especially colds where people are kind of depleted. Elderberry is my favorite antiviral, although I really like the flowers for reducing fevers. I usually combine them with yarrow and peppermint, and that's my favorite remedy for fevers and colds for children. Bayberry is a great remedy for getting rid of mucus. If you ever have that sticky phlegm, like that gets stuck to the back of your throat and it doesn't want to come off, bayberry root bark loosens that phlegm better than any other remedy I know. So it's really great for sore throats due to postnasal drip. It's really good for chronic sinus infections and so forth, where you need to break up the mucus and get things to drain. Thyme is a very good remedy also for infection and sinus congestion. It's one of the better remedies for breaking up chronically congested sinuses. Another strong antimicrobial is oregano, which I don't use that much, but a lot of people really swear by. Colt's foot is a remedy that is a decongestant, but it's also one of the few herbs that acts as a cough suppressant. So sometimes when a person's been coughing and coughing to the point that they're just exhausted from coughing, you do want to use a cough suppressant so they can at least sleep through the night. Bitter orange is an alternative to ephedra, which has now been taken off the market, in that it has a natural antihistamine effect and is a decongestant and can help dilate the bronchioles in cases of bronchitis. Another single remedy that a lot of people don't think of as being for colds is eyebright, but I call eyebright the herbal eye, ear, nose, and throat doctor because it's a great remedy for ear problems where kids get frequent earaches. It reduces swelling in the eustachian tubes. I call it herbal tubes in the ears. And it's very good for drippy sinus drainage with red eyes or red itchy eyes. And I also find horseradish to be an excellent remedy for respiratory congestion and digestive upset, similar to capsicum and ginger. Now let's look at a few of our combination remedies. We'll start with the first one is ALJ. ALJ is boneset, horseradish, mullein, fennel. It's one of my favorite remedies for basic congestion. It's anytime you've got sinus problems, cough, stuff in the lungs. ALJ is great for breaking up congested mucus and helping the body expel it or eliminate it more quickly. So it's been one of my favorite remedies for colds for many, many years. CCA is another remedy. I haven't used it as much as I have used the ALJ, but it is another good remedy that you can take. It helps to break up the cold really quickly, especially if you take 2 to 4 capsules every 2 hours. CCA with yerba santa is a liquid form of CCA that also includes an herb called yerba santa, of course. It makes sense, right? It's yerba santa, CCA with yerba santa. But it also has a couple other minor changes because it's in a liquid form. This is a really good one for breaking up deep-seated cough. Yerba santa is excellent for breaking up hard mucus in the system. And that's a good one to give for kids. Again, you give it small, frequently repeated doses. Where people have a tendency to easily catch colds in the winter, especially elderly people or people with chronic respiratory weakness, or if you live in a cold, dry climate where you get cold, dry air, this next remedy, Chinese lung support, is really good for maintaining respiratory health and keeping you from getting colds, and it can also help you recover from them. It has the nourishing astragalus root as well as things that like build up the lungs and protect the what we refer to as the wei qi, or the energy of the body that defends the body against infection. Elderberry defense is a great remedy for enhancing the immune system. It's got the elderberry, the echinacea, royal jelly, which enhances the immune system, and olive leaf, which fights infection. I really find that to be a useful formula. And elderberry plus, which is a chewable thing for children, is elderberry, reishi mushroom, and astragalus. So it has, again, an immune-enhancing tonic as well as elderberry. That's one you could actually give to your kids if colds and flu are going around as a preventive, not just as something to help treat it. Here's one of those ones that you don't think of as a respiratory aid, but EW is excellent for chronic, sinus stuff with drippy, runny nose. It's got the eyebright, the bayberry, the golden seal, all of which are excellent cold fighters. So EW, even though most people think of it as an eye wash, is very good for upper respiratory congestion and colds or hay fever kind of conditions. HCPX, or herbal composition powder, is one of my favorite remedies for colds and flu. It's best made into a tea, 3 to 4 capsules per a cup of water. Actually, 2 to 3 is enough per cup of water. If you add a little bit of lobelia and golden seal to that, you have herbal crisis formula, which is a formula that my first herb teacher Ed Millett taught me, which I've used to really knock out colds and flu in many cases. The secret is to take this in small, frequently repeated doses, stop eating, drink that plus plenty of water until the system clears itself out. Seasonal defense contains a number of herbs that help to break up congestion in the lungs. It's a really good remedy for the changing seasons, fall and spring, when you're more susceptible to colds and so forth. It can be taken as something to help ward it off when it's going around, or something after it's already started. And another great remedy, the last one we're going to talk about, is Ultimate Echinacea, which is a blend of 3 different varieties of echinacea, which stimulates the immune system. Again, this is really good for prevention Not the best remedy for the early stages of the cold, but a very good remedy if things get more chronic and deep-seated. It boosts the immune system and helps get rid of the problem. So I hope that that gives you a little more useful information about some of the many things that we can use and apply with the ACB system that we talked about in the video. Thanks for watching.